The back of this is nice and clean. No kibble going on here at all. Nothing sticking out. There are exactly 19 screws that you can see on the back of this thing. But who cares? You're not displaying it this way. Now, I don't typically go on a lot about the transformation of a figure, but again, this Smokey impressed me so much. Fan Toys thinking into the transformation of this figure impressed me so much that I feel like I have to comment on it. Again, the fact that the whole robot collapses down this entire size down into something that is this size with the collapsing of the legs and the arms to get it into this nice compact shape. It is typical of their quality. But the most impressive part that I found was the rib cage area here. So this shape, right, if you look at the shape of this, this is what forms the wing on the front of the car. So they had to come up with a way to get this to flip out and fold up so it ends up, you know, up here. Yet this shape is the part of the car, and I will just rotate the car, is the part of the car where the cockpit comes down onto the body of the car. And this has obviously the same shape so that this can become that and lock into place. And the fact that they had to come up with a way to come up with this shape and duplicate it back here to get the car to lock into place. And this thing is solid, right, just like the figure, and has some good weight to it once it's done. That really impressed me. So again, I don't normally gush on the transformation, but it's just really impressive. And then there's the feet. So we have the feet here with articulation. Not a whole lot of articulation, unfortunately. It doesn't pivot front to back, but it does pivot in. But these feet rotate down and collapse to make up the rear of the car. This is the foot here in the back of the car. So this becomes that. And with the tire rotating out to the outside of the car, it also ends up with a die-cast metal slot that the feet actually lock into to solidify the entire back of the car. But again, really impressive engineering, thinking, design to get this into that. And speaking of the cockpit of the car, this is the toughest part of the transformation when you are collapsing them down. Getting this part of the car to collapse onto this part, because this does tab into here. You kind of have to wiggle it in and press down. It does say in the instructions to press down with some force, and they are serious. You do need to really press down on this area to get it to snap into place. And one other thing to note with the transformation is maybe Fan Toys has finally started listening to us in wanting better instructions, but it looks like they have a new style of instructions going on, because they're showing the individual steps based on the part that you're working on, not the entire figure. At least for the first few steps they did this. Like this is the crotch area, and all they're showing is the crotch area. It looks like it's probably from the 3D rendering drawings that they used to design the figure, and they're highlighting specific areas that move. Same thing here with the legs. All that's here is just the leg, the foot, the wheel, you know, the shin. You don't see the entire figure, and it zoomed in on a part of the figure, and then they kind of moved away from it after that, and then you start seeing the entire figure again afterwards. But I like this new sort of focused in detail on just a specific part. Again, I think is very, very smart. And I had to say that the instructions on Smokey were actually quite clear. Again, the transformation of Smokey was easy, it was intuitive, but it was nice that the instructions were really easy to follow as well. So fun fact about this design, I will just deviate for just a second, but this was the only six-wheel design Formula One race car that ever existed was of this design. It was by a team called Tyrrell. The car was called the P-34. They actually created the car in 1976 and ran it in 1977. It was actually quite successful. And there were two drivers that drove two cars. They both took first and second in one particular race in the 1977 season. And then in 1978, they made some alterations, and it did terribly, and they abandoned the project altogether. There were several other race teams that decided to try the six-wheeled variant, but they never actually raced the cars. And then eventually Formula One put in a rule that said it had to have four wheels, and all the teams abandoned the cars. So there's only one team. 1977 was the only time it was raced, and it was pretty successful. And the tires are a soft, smooth, slick that you're sure to see on a sporty Sportster such as this. The one other thing that I'd like to note, and it's just an interesting oddity to me, I like pointing out these things, and you feel free to skip past this part if you don't care, but what I noticed, and I think it's just some type of a weird visual optical illusion lighting effect, but this is the forearm, the back of the arm, which makes up this part of the alt mode. And as you can see, I'm fairly certain you can see this on the camera, but when you compare this paint color to this, it is pretty close. It's the same, right? This is die cast, so it might come out a little bit darker, but the intention is that this is meant to be the same color as that. And you can't really tell the difference between this yellow and that yellow. They're the same. But when you look at his alt mode, you can definitely tell that this yellow is different than this yellow. And I don't know if it has to do with the fact that it's close to the dark mustard yellow, and or maybe the way the lighting hits it, or I don't know, but you can see that this is not the same color as that, and yet when you look at his alt mode, that does look like the same color as that, looks like the same color as that. So it's just weird to me, and I don't get it, and it freaks me out. The paint is also on the die-cast parts, like I said, completely painted top to bottom, except for the thighs and the hands. So this includes the die-cast parts. But of course, the risk with painted die-cast parts is that they do tend to chip. And I will admit that on this guy, which is the one that I used for my transformation videos, which means I had to go and transform this guy about a dozen times or so. So the back of the back of the arms are die cast and they're painted. And I will admit that on this guy, I managed to chip both of the forearms during the transformations, just on the corners. Very small, but it did chip. And the other part that I managed to chip, oddly, and I don't know how I managed to do this, but this waist area, the front flap here, this is die cast, this is painted, and I managed to chip the corner of this somehow, really small chip, but it did happen. So painted die cast does tend to chip, so just be mindful of it during your transformation. Be careful with the die cast parts. On the chrome engine block, I think you can see it in the camera shot here, but actually, you know what? Let me just pop the engine out, and I can show it to you this way. Right here, there's two white spots, and same thing as on the other side. This looks like where the engine block was in the mold when they coated it in chrome, and then when they broke it out of the mold, this got left behind. A little disappointing that Fan Toys didn't touch this up before they assembled it, but what I will tell you is that when you collapse the engine block away, you can't really see. Like, you gotta really go looking for it. And I'll just bring the alt mode in. You can't see it at all in the alt mode because it tucks in behind the engine bay here, behind the black area here. That spot is here, so you can't even see it in the alt mode. There's the steering wheel that's here. I'll just turn it around. The steering wheel that's actually in the cockpit, but unfortunately, mine popped out. And again, I saw that somebody else noted that the steering wheel popped out on theirs as well. It's not snapped in, it's not pegged in. It's not part of this chrome bar that is sitting here. It's literally just sitting in a shape that makes up the base of the steering wheel. And from what I can tell, it was, I want to say it was glued on, because there was a small speck on the bottom of the steering wheel, the base of the steering wheel, that looks like there was a speck of glue that was put there to glue it into place. And it popped off, mine popped off, during the transformation while I was flexing the body to separate the cockpit away from the rest of the body. And while I was shifting it back and forth, I heard something hit the floor, and when I looked down, it was the steering wheel. So just keep an eye on that. It's just stuck in there somehow. Again, like I said, I think it's glue. And I've got mine back in there using Gorilla Glue, so it will probably never come out again. And then the other one to note is the pin that is holding the engine block onto the die-cast part that it pivots on to move from here into the cockpit. There's a pin that runs across the length of it, and it's already been noted by a couple of people that this pops out. This will probably become the new 2021 where did this come from post that we'll see on Facebook for the rest of the year. That's it, everybody. If you've made it this far and you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit that like button down below. Sure helps out a lot. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. And please check the links in the description if you'd like to support my channel. There's a link in there for buymeacoffee.com that you can use to support the channel. Once again, thanks a lot. This has been Transformers Masterpiece Theater. I'm the Rusty Mechanic.